Welcome to the Regen Brands podcast. This is a place for consumers, operators, and investors to learn about the consumer brands supporting regenerative agriculture and how they're changing the world. This is your host, Kyle, joined by my co-host, AC, who's going to take us into the episode.
On this episode, we have Jared Simon, who is the CEO at Manitoba Harvest. Manitoba Harvest is North America's leading hemp food brand, and they're supporting regenerative agriculture with their recently released Regenerative Organic Certified hemp hearts. In this episode, Jared breaks down how hemp is grown and some of the agronomic differences between conventional, organic, and regenerative organic cultivation. He also shares how Manitoba Harvest is developing their commercial strategy around regenerative and what this means for both their branded business and B2B ingredient business. Jared was super engaging and insightful, and we really enjoyed gleaning his insights on how a legacy scaled brand like Manitoba Harvest starts prioritizing regenerative, opportunities he sees in the broader regen movement, and how their work is influencing the larger publicly traded parent company that they sit within. Excited to share this one with you all. Let's go. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Regen Brands podcast. Very excited today to have Jared from Manitoba Harvest joining us. So welcome, Jared.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You know, I way back when I used to sell bars. That was the only thing I did. And there was always like the battle of the bars. And I believe, Manitoba, you all had some hemp bars. Like
we did.
We're talking like 10 years ago. Is that right?
Yeah, we did. We don't have them anymore, but we did. Yes.
Right. I remember those days, and they did well, and they were good bars. And I was like, man, these guys are doing good stuff. But for give us a quick lay of the land. For those who are unfamiliar with the brand, as I am because of my previous battles in the bar section, what is it that you produce today? Where can people find your stuff? Give us the high level.
Yeah, thanks. So Manitoba Harvest is the leading hemp food manufacturer in North America and probably around the world. We've been around since 1998. We really were the pioneer in the hemp food industry. And hemp continues to be a product that grows year after year. More and more consumers discover it. And because of that, you can find hemp in so many places today, both in the US and Canada and internationally. If we take the US market, which is where we are today here, you can find us everywhere from your natural independents to Whole Foods, all the way to Walmart. I mean, hemp has gotten that pervasive in the marketplace, and there's that much interest that, we really can be marketed and sold in really any channel and hit consumers, anywhere that they're shopping at retail. We have a big online business as well. So, really nice business, DTC and Amazon. So hemp is out there. It's just waiting to be discovered.
Yeah. I was sharing with Jared before we started that I'm the consumer of the giant Costco hemp hearts bag from Manitoba Harvest. So that's my go-to on the hemp side. Jared, this is a really unique episode for us. I think it's the first, publicly traded brand that we've had on, and y'all are part of a bigger org there, Tilray. This is a brand that's been around for a long time. It's been through a couple of transactions. So I think our origin story question is a little bit different for you, where it's like, hey, share that with us also, but kind of bring us to present day in the current context that you operate in, because I think it's unique and a first time for our listeners.
Yeah, let me take a step back. So Manitoba Harvest was founded in 1998. We just celebrated our 25th anniversary last year.
Wow. Congrats.
Huge. Thank you. It was a big deal and really amazing to see, what this organization has evolved into over that 25-year span. But it was founded in 1998 by Mike Fata up in Manitoba in Winnipeg. And Mike really started this company with a personal mission and a personal journey to improve his health. He had some challenges, health wise and weight wise. And he really found hemp as this superfood that he could rely on, depend on to eat well, eat healthy, plant-based. We can talk about all the benefits of hemp as we go on. But his mission was to go out there and share this wonderful superfood that he found, with as many retailers as possible. So started as a Canadian business, kind of grew up right in Manitoba and then spread throughout Canada, in the late 90s into the early 2000s. Fortunately, at the time, hemp had not been allowed in the US market up until the late 90s, but farm bills back in the late 90s allowed hemp for import for food-based purposes. Yeah. And Mike, with his organization, did a lot of work to make sure hemp was recognized as a food ingredient, foodstuff, GRAS approval, because it was still very much an unknown foodstuff in the U.S. And hemp, we can talk about this too, often gets miscategorized with cannabis. So there's a lot of confusion amongst consumers,
Right.
retailers, regulators. But the brand did grow up, through the early 2000s, in Canada and the U.S., and continued to pick up momentum as it got, one retail chain after another, as consumers showed this real interest in buying hemp and incorporating it into their diets. The brand, sometime in the early 2000s, actually merged with another brand called Hemp Oil Canada, started by Sean Crew, also in Manitoba. They're just down the road, and still today, those two organizations are what make up Manitoba Harvest, the old Hemp Oil Canada organization, which was more of an ingredient sales company, and Manitoba Harvest. And then to your point, Manitoba Harvest was sold to Tilray about 5 years ago. And Tilray, for those who are listening who don't know, Tilray is a global CPG company that's highly focused in really three areas. Cannabis, it started as a cannabis company, particularly in the Canadian recreational market and the European medical markets. That's where it services the cannabis consumer. Beer and spirits company. It's made some acquisitions in beer and spirits over the last few years. And then there's this wellness division, which is really led by Manitoba Harvest. And hemp, again, being the sister plant to cannabis, there was some real opportunity, to share knowledge and synergize those two verticals within the company. So that's where we are today. We are part of Tilray. Tilray is a NASDAQ listed, publicly traded company. We're one of the divisions that's based here in North America within the company. And that sets up a lot of interesting opportunities, which I'm happy to share as we go through the conversation today.
Super cool. I really want to kind of dive into the difference between the cannabis plant and the hemp plant, what you utilize out of the hemp plant, and then what products you're turning that into. What does Manitoba Harvest actually sell from a SKU perspective?
Yeah, great. So let me start with the plant itself. So the hemp plant is in the same family. They're really sisters. Cannabis and hemp are really sister plants. They have a lot of the same genetics. The difference between hemp and cannabis really comes down to the cannabinoid level in many ways, where cannabis is really grown to optimize cannabinoids, whether that be CBD, CBG, CBN, or THC. Hemp in many ways has been grown to optimize other parts of the plant, whether it be the fibers or whether it be the seed for food. You can get flour from hemp, and actually some of that flour, if you grow varieties that are more flour forward, can be used for CBD. There's a fairly robust hemp-based CBD market here in the US. But primarily hemp is grown today for its industrial uses on the fiber side and its food uses on the seed side. We don't play in the fiber market, but it's an incredibly interesting market and one that's growing rapidly. Hemp fiber, which is really the stalk primarily, if you think of what a big hemp plant looks like. Hemp fiber can be used in things as simple as pet bedding, all the way to more complex textiles, or even items like hempcrete, which is basically a concrete substitute because the fibers are that strong. Or hemp fiber is mixed with other compounds to make a very strong building material, which is super cool and a great way to have a carbon sink if you think about all the carbon hemp takes in. So that part of the plant goes more towards industrial use, on the fiber side. What we harvest as Manitoba Harvest is the seed, and the hemp plant generates a lot of seed, and that seed comes with a hull around a heart, and that heart in the middle of the hull is what most consumers would be familiar with when eating hemp. That's that classic hemp heart that we sell and market. Still makes up a very big part of our portfolio. And what you would find in a lot of other products, whether that be granolas or cereals or even the bars that we were talking about earlier. There's a lot of other applications of hemp. We also produce hemp oil and hemp protein. All of those also can be made from that seed. And those are also used in various ingredients, for boosting all kinds of nutritionals. And we'll talk about that in a second. And I think that's really interesting to us too, is where else do we go with different components of the hemp plant. Maybe a little later I can talk about an innovation that we're doing right now in the fiber space with our hemp hulls, which is super cool.
I was just about to ask, can you do anything with the hulls? I was literally just about to ask.
Interestingly, for a long time, I don't want to say they were a waste product, but they were a lower value product. They would typically work their way back into animal feeding streams, or they would just be used, to put back on field and as fertilization. But a super cool development over the last year, we partnered with a company called Brightseed, and they're out in California. If you're familiar with them, they have some really cool AI technology, forager app. And what they actually discovered serendipitously as they were doing some of their work is that there are some bioactive compounds that are really important for gut health. And they are unique in many ways to the hemp plant, in particular the hemp hull. Like the highest concentrations of these bioactive compounds happen to be in the hemp hull. So we read about the work they were doing. We called them up, and within months, we had a project going. And literally 2 months ago, we just released a bioactive fiber. We just launched it at Whole Foods globally 2 months ago. And it's this really cool story about an upcycled product, right? This was like a waste stream in some ways in what we were doing. But now you've got this great upcycled food that's incredibly nutritious and really something that is, revolutionary for what has been a relatively sleepy category when you think about, fiber and fiber products, in the supplement aisle. So that's a pretty cool story. And you have this all over hemp. Like hemp is one of these plants because, for many years it was put on the back burner. It wasn't grown the way, corn or rice or soy, were grown. It's just in the last 20 years, we're discovering all of the different things that hemp can do and all of the benefits of hemp. And each year we seem to discover something new. So it's pretty exciting. It's an exciting time to be in hemp, and it's an exciting time to be innovating in hemp as well.
Yeah. It's crazy to think how little long ago, how such a short time ago, you couldn't even, it wasn't legal to even sell this or buy it here in the States, especially. And I love kind of the call out on the fiber product. I saw that on the website, but I didn't know the story, behind it and the research that went into it. And I think Kyle and I are both pretty bullish on the fact that regenerative brands had shown that they're a great way for us to commercialize better crop rotations and better crop, setups. But layering in that scientific component that powers that innovation is a really cool story. And I think we need a ton more of that in this space to figure out, what are those specific nutrients, phytonutrients, whatever it may be, and what end product is there a real market opportunity to kind of get them into?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I really want to make sure I understand this new product because it sounds fascinating. And I'm looking at it on the website right now, and it seems almost like similar to like a psyllium husk. I always say the word wrong, but is that like the same category?
Yeah. So what we did is we took it's a blended fiber solution. So we actually have psyllium husk in the product. So it's a blend between hemp fiber and psyllium fiber. The psyllium brings that soluble fiber, which is really important for regularity and moving things through the system. And that's your soluble fiber. Hemp fiber is more of an insoluble fiber. And when you blend them together, they pair really well to give you this complete fiber solution. And then the cherry on top are these bioactive compounds that are inherent within the hemp hull, which is where we're getting that insoluble fiber. That are just now starting to get their, moment in the sun in terms of what they can do for gut health and regularity and satiety. And I think there's even more to come here. Like we're doing some clinical studies right now with Brightseed, just to go and further prove what these bioactive compounds can do, and hopefully in the future, even have some more concrete claims that we can make to the consumer on what this product can do.
Super cool. It sounds like a fantastic product. I think I know myself and a handful of other health focused folks have psyllium husk in their pantries. This feels like a more complete version with some additional benefits. So to me, it's a no brainer to trade up. Really excited about this product. Really cool.
Yeah. Thanks. We are too. Thank you.
Jared, a question popped into my mind when you were kind of going through the overall org setup. Can you describe how vertically integrated and is there processing on the name is escaping me of the sister company? Are y'all taking seed all the way to end product? Are you receiving a processed version of that? Like, is there a processing component here? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So are you talking just in Manitoba Harvest in general?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me talk you through how we operate. We are almost vertically integrated. We don't own any of our farmland, and we don't do the farming ourselves, but we have long-standing farming partnerships that we've developed over the last 20, 25 years. We have an agronomy team in-house that goes out and works with the farmers, really optimizing the varietals of hemp that they're growing, giving them tips, on some of the growing practices that we're learning about, or best practices, sharing them from farm to farm. We grow most of our hemp still today up in Canada, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Quebec being the 4 provinces that we primarily source our hemp from. We do have some farmer partners in the US, and occasionally we will go to the European market, but most of what we still grow today is in Canada. So we don't do the growing, but what we do is we help work with some of the companies that are developing the genetics on the seed. So we're involved there. Like I said, we're involved in the agronomy. And then once the hemp is harvested, we're taking it the rest of the way. It will go to a seed cleaner, off the farm, and then we're taking it in-house. We've got 2 manufacturing facilities up in Manitoba that do everything from heat treating the seed for safety, dehulling the seed, taking that hull off of that precious heart, and then we're turning it into either hemp hearts, hemp oil, hemp fiber, hemp protein in our facilities, or value-added products like granolas or hot cereals or things like that. And then obviously we're doing the packaging and the marketing and bringing it to retail. So it's pretty neat to be involved in an organization that has built up that level of expertise, in almost every part of the supply chain.
That's super cool. And I'm curious, like you mentioned agronomy and that sort of assistance for farmers. I'm really curious from an agronomy perspective, like how is hemp grown? You talked about corn, you talked about soy, and how it's like essentially giant monocrop. Is hemp like a bumper crop? Is it after an existing cash crop, like a secondary cash crop? Walk us through the hemp growing process.
Absolutely. So hemp is grown outdoors. So cannabis is more indoor grow. Hemp is grown outdoors. It's grown in many ways like a traditional row crop. The differences, though, are number one, the way it grows, because hemp is such an aggressive grower and it grows so quickly. It's quite, I don't want to say it's easy to grow, but it requires less input than a lot of other crops. Even our conventional hemp, because we do some conventional hemp and then we do organic and then we do regen, doesn't need any herbicides or pesticides because it's such an aggressive grower, right? And you don't have that competition, it outcompetes the other weed. On the field. So that's number one. That's what's great about how it's grown. Most farmers are growing this in a rotation, and they're moving it around from year to year on a 3-year cycle. So a lot of our farmers in the Canadian prairies, they're growing hemp 1 year. Maybe they're putting in, a nitrogen fixing crop, a year after, and then maybe they're going to a traditional grain crop like a barley, or an oat. Or something like that. It really varies. Every farm is a little bit different. But that was a huge advantage for us when we knew we wanted to move into regen, is we had so many farmers who just got it. Like they were already doing so many of the great things, of regenerative agriculture, that they said, okay, to meet a certification process, we can do that and we can work with you to get there. And ultimately that is how we got there on our ROC certified product that we released last year. So that is how it's grown. The hemp plant gets pretty big. It's pretty neat to see a hemp field in August or September.
We talking like 6 feet high, 10 feet high? Like give us some specifics.
They get to, most of the varieties we grow get to 5 or 6 feet high. There are ones that get higher, but then they become a little bit harder to process. And the combines can't handle them if they get too big. So 5 or 6 is kind of the optimal size where you get a great yield of seed, but you're also able to harvest it in a way that it's not problematic. So it's pretty neat. And then when harvest comes, what happens is, the hemp seed gets harvested. Some of the farms will then sell the fiber to another player in the marketplace who's converting that fiber into whatever it may be, low value products like bedding or higher value products. Some farmers are reworking that biomass into the soil, or leaving it on the fields over to winter, winter to protect the soil, and then allowing that to be, the basis for what they're growing upon the next year. So it really varies depending on the farmer, what they're going to do with the biomass when all is said and done.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. I love the fact that there's so many different applications and revenue streams for the farmers. I think that's really cool and super important, especially for a regenerative product. Like, how do we make sure that this makes sense for those who are producing on the ground? You sort of alluded to this earlier, like you do conventional, organic, and regenerative. Quickly, if you can, without saying that obviously conventional has the most opportunity to improve, and we don't want to say that that's bad. But what are the differences from an agronomy perspective between those three different systems?
Yeah. So I'd say, really, the biggest difference is just some of the, the practices. I think, so starting with conventional versus organic, I think it is fertilization. And, the conventional farmer might be supplementing some fertilizers within their crops that are non-organic fertilizers, right? And using some fertilization that doesn't get them to organic. Other than that, they're doing a lot of the same good things, from a land management, land stewardship, that you would see a typical organic farmer doing. And again, some of that is just the nature of this crop. It doesn't get a lot of pests, it doesn't have, the competition with weeds. So you don't really need to treat it in a way that you would, with a conventional crop that might be a different type of crop. Organic, of course, is complying with all the USDA organic or Canadian organic standards. So there's a little bit more there, in terms of how they're fertilizing the crop and how they're getting that crop started. And then obviously with Regen, there's the criteria, and we've chosen ROC. So there's the criteria set forth by ROC, to manage it as a Regen crop. But like I said, it wasn't a big leap for some of our organic farmers to get from what they were doing today to get to ROC certification, because they were already doing, 90% of what ROC would have required. And there were a few practices here and there, and, that they may have needed to shift, but it wasn't necessarily a huge lift. And that to us is really promising in that, as this ROC or this regenerative market in general gets bigger, we think there's more acres we can bring online, which is really exciting to us.
Yeah, Jared, I'd love for you to share a little bit more about the kind of regenerative journey, what that's been like, how y'all have evaluated that, why you've made the decisions you've made. It does seem like the majority of the legacy brands that have scaled to some significant capacity that now have, regenerative SKUs, they had this latent supply that they knew they could turn on pretty quickly, or just wasn't certified, or it was really close to being certified. Right. So it seems like it's been kind of a supply chain analysis opportunity. It's like, hey, we already have the supplier really close, and we're bullish on the marketing side commercially. Let's do something here. But give us the details on how that came together on y'all's end.
Yeah, I think it came from a few different directions. I think it came from our team of agronomists and the farmers themselves who were starting to explore what does regenerative mean as regenerative started to get more notability in the marketplace and a better understanding. So there was some bottoms up, farmers asking about it and our agronomy team engaging them on it, and then bringing it back to, the sales and marketing team within my organization. At the same time, of course, we were there a few years ago looking at the marketplace and really admiring the brands who were moving, early in this regenerative space and saying, this is a great movement. How do we become a partner in this movement? Because, we've always prided ourselves as being, a pioneer, on sustainability. And so there was this, conversation about what could we do? How fast could we do it? What would the premium be? How would we package it up? Who would be the right launch partner? All of those conversations commercially to triangulate, okay, let's go then commit to it for this year crop. Let's go get seed in the ground. Let's do everything we need to do so that we have enough acres online to go and launch commercially at some scale. And that was a decision we made, back in 2021, so that we could start growing the crop in 2022, ROC certified, and then after the harvest in November and the processing, we could get something in market in early 2023. And that is when we launched in the market with a finished product.
And give us like, I think is it right now there's one rock SKU at the moment. It's the hemp hearts.
Yes.
What does the plan look like? Because you all do supplements, granolas, like protein. There's all sorts of different like SKUs and lines. Like how does the integration plan oil? What's the integration plan for rock look like from a, I guess, quote, an innovation perspective, if you will, or just like a line penetration perspective, however you want to word it?
So I think that's a great question. I think, we're looking at where do we want to go next with rock. The simplest place to go would be, an oil or a protein, a single ingredient. But I think, and we may very well go there, but those are still relatively small businesses, small impact compared to the hearts. So I think priority number one is get rock hearts in more locations. Like right now we've got Whole Foods nationally, fortunately. We've got some other great partners, in the natural channel. We have some conventional retailers or more conventional retailers starting to come online in this upcoming year. So that's really exciting. Like they're seeing it out in the market in 2023 and, and they're saying, hey, how do we—
I want to pause you there real quick. Are they getting more excited because this product is now rock certified, or are they just generally excited about the brand and it happens to be rock certified?
Both. These are partners that already carry hemp hearts and carry the brand that say, hey, we've seen you go into rock in the natural channel. How do we bring that to, the mainstream channel or the conventional channel in terms of retail? Cool. And let's bring in a SKU to supplement what we have here today, in your conventional and organic mix. Another place we're pushing pretty aggressively in rock, we do have an ingredient sales business. So 80% of our company is branded Manitoba Harvest, but another 20%, we do sell ingredients to lots of other players, great CPG companies, who are using hemp in their products, whether it be in cereals or bars or meals or whatever else. And rock is now, on the list, so to speak, in terms of what we're presenting to our customers. Nice. And we're telling them, about, the importance of rock. We're telling them about the success that we're seeing with rock on the branded side. And we're getting them interested, because that's where this thing really takes off is, Manitoba Harvest hemp, great that we've got, that in rock certification now, but some of these other players who are starting to integrate hemp into their recipes, how do you get, rock certification hemp, as part of their mix too? And what are the things they're thinking about in terms of products that can integrate it? So yeah, it's kind of a multi-pronged approach that we're taking.
That's a huge theme that we're seeing across a lot of these enterprises is a couple things. You have to be vertically integrated to some degree to get the unit economics where they need to be and to have kind of the touch points and the relationships with the farmers to make all this stuff work commercially. Yeah. And you have to have some sort of B2B presence. Not always, but it's usually very helpful to support the branded business to build that scale for the unit economics and kind of the grower offtake and those things. So super interesting to hear you speak to that. I'm curious on the rock side, and this is a Kyle question because he's the one selling to retailers all the time. But how has the feedback been on the pricing? Like online, I can see the rock hemp are $19.99 and the regular organic is $15.99. Like, how has that price architecture conversation been?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been understood. I think it's not dissimilar to conversations I've had throughout my career on, why pay a premium for organic versus conventional on some brands. Here it's why pay the additional premium on rock. What does that do? What does it give the farmer? What does it allow them to do? From a consumer perspective, the consumer ultimately, will vote with their pocketbook, so to speak. And, so far we've seen, a number of consumers willing to make that extra investment in rock because they know the importance it has, on the land, and they know the importance it has from a sustainability standpoint. And I think there's also a perceived, benefit in quality and, the more care you put into growing anything, the better and more pure product you're going to have at the end of the day. So I think consumers understand that implicitly as well. So, so far, I think we've seen the consumer respond or a portion of consumers respond. I think in the long term, right, and this is, what I have faced many times in my career with organic too. It's how do you narrow that premium, right? We're always working on how do you bring the natural and organic premium, closer together. So it's not a big jump for consumers. I think the same thing's going on in rock today is, how do you get more farmers doing it? How do you get more scale? How do you make it where, rock is almost the default over time, that it can narrow that gap? And there's still some benefit passed on to the farmer, but it's also getting easier for the consumer to enter into rock products.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely the hope, right? I think right now we're in sort of that early adopter phase where there's going to have to be a premium until we reach economies of scale, and this becomes practiced across the board. You mentioned the consumer adoption piece a little bit, and I really want to drill into this.
Yeah.
Like, how are you all messaging the rock benefits to consumers? You talked a little bit about perceived quality of taste. Have you done any nutritional density studies comparing like rock versus conventional? How are you all thinking about this, and what seems to be resonating with your consumer group so far?
Yeah, I think education is a big piece. And we have spent a lot of time and energy talking about, regenerative. And you talk about this regularly on the podcast here. There still is such a big opportunity to educate the consumers at large on regenerative. There's a great number of consumers who are in the know, and that's wonderful. And every day, that number gets bigger, but there's still a much bigger majority that are not in the know on regenerative. It's like, how do you capture them at shelf? How do you capture them online so they can start learning and start investing some time into understanding what regenerative is all about? I will say, Whole Foods was a great launch partner because they are very vested in this. From day one, when we launched with them, we actually had shelf signage up in store, danglers pulling people to the shelf and explaining, the benefit of regenerative, and calling out this new product launch, me being the hemp product there. We've done some digital campaigns, whether that be, direct to consumer through Amazon, that also have highlighted, regenerative and what the benefits of regenerative are for the environment, for the farmer. We certainly do a lot of messaging, in our CRM, in reaching out to consumers. Like right now we've got our, Earth Month campaign going on. We're sitting here in April. And part of the messaging that's going out there is the sustainability of hemp, which has a great sustainability story in and of itself, but then also some of the efforts and initiatives we're doing, on regenerative, that go beyond just base organic. And I think that's what, we need to continue to plug away and do. It's that education, and, it's the education on pack too, that when the consumer finally does go and purchase the product, they can bring it home and maybe read a little bit more, on back of pack about regenerative and what we're doing. And, maybe it introduces them to ROC and they go to the ROC website and then they learn even more. So yeah, education is a big piece of this. And, it's something that, we continue to invest behind.
Yeah, and for those that are just listening and not watching, we'll link it in the show notes. But the actual product packaging itself has the rock logo very big on the front. It has "Farming for a Better Future" kind of tagline on the front, and then there's a very large portion of the back of pack dedicated to kind of educating on what this is, what it means, with the tagline kind of at the bottom of all that: better for you, better for the earth, better for the farmers. So significant investment on the storytelling side, on the packaging side, which I think we need across the board from all these kind of regenerative brands and regenerative SKUs, because we're going to have to get eyeballs on these things at retail to really create some sort of resonance that really drives purchase. I want to ask one more question on the price architecture, Jared, is just, are retailers seeing this as, hey, we would love for these rock hemp parts to eventually just be your organic hemp part offering? Or are they looking at it as like a better best, where they want them side by side to really establish, hey, there's a difference here, and these are different? Or like, what are you seeing feedback wise from retailers there?
Thus far, I think it's more the latter, where it's like a good, better, best, right? You're conventional, you're organic, you're rock. But it's interesting. Over time, could it evolve where, rock is, it's one or the other, and hopefully we're choosing maybe rock in that environment because it adds even more benefit to the consumer, and that price gap has narrowed. I think in some retailers, with a more limited shelf set, more limited SKU count, it could evolve into that, where maybe it is a, conventional, and then it's a, rock, which is organic and regenerative together in one offering. So I don't know, it's still early days, and we've got only a few test cases out there at real scale. So, it'd be interesting to have this conversation, 18, 24 months from now, because I do wonder where, some of the big retailers, as we get them into this, and maybe they have a little bit more limited shelf space, on a SKU like hemp, where they ultimately go.
Yeah, I know from just to kind of echo some of this for Kill and Fire, our biggest barrier, and I'm assuming it's the same for you all, is supply chain. There are not enough regenerative bones for us to transition our full supply chain right now, and retailers seem to be very understanding when you say that. And I'm assuming it's probably the same boat for you. If you all want to say, "Hey, we're going to turn everything to rock tomorrow," it's like, hold on, that's going to take some time. Let's prove that this is going to work. Accept the premium for now, and then it'll kind of trickle down. And that's like the conversations I've had with retailers. And does that seem kind of similar for you, Jared?
Yeah. Yes, we've had a couple of those conversations on what would the lead time need to be. And hemp is a once a year growing cycle. You plant it, in April, and you harvest it in September, October. So there is a degree of planning that needs to happen with our farming.
Hold on, real quick. Did you say you're planting hemp in April in Canada? Do you not have to worry about frost?
April, May, it depends. Quebec is maybe a little bit more April. May is probably when we're getting it in the prairies. And then it does grow, through September, because you also have a shortened season on the end. So it's once you can get in, we do. So yes, we're just starting to get to some of our earliest plantings now. And then, probably May is probably a bigger season that we go.
Okay. Plant. I live in Bend, Oregon, and I can't start planting in the ground. Apparently my plant date is May 12th because of the frost. So the fact that you're able to plant before that in Canada, to me, just is crazy. But
it depends. It depends. The more southern parts you can, but and I might have mentioned earlier. I think one of the cool things about hemp too is it is a pretty resilient and hardy crop, and once it gets going and it takes hold, it's a pretty strong grower. And we've even seen in years when there's been drought, instead of so hemp has a very deep taproot. That's another reason why it's just such a great plant from a sustainability standpoint, and why it fits into a regenerative rotation because of that deep taproot. But in years where there's drought and less water, you see the roots actually spread out more than go deep, which is super interesting from kind of a growing standpoint, because it will adapt to the climate in place. So it's a pretty hardy crop, and it's pretty fascinating to watch.
Yeah, I've heard that there are two crops in particular that seem to be doing really well for they're almost, I don't want to diminish what you all are doing, but these crops tend to be more inherently regenerative, and that's hemp and buckwheat. And it really feels like those two crops have this huge opportunity to develop real regenerative markets. And because they have so many different applications, they can penetrate so many different areas. Whereas beef is beef. You can't turn beef into a chip. I mean, I guess you potentially could, but somebody's doing it with chicken right now. There are chicken chips out there, but I think hemp is so cool because it is inherently so great for the planet and so versatile. So that's a really great opportunity.
Yeah, and that's where I talked a little bit about the protein, which is still a very, very small part of our business, but one that we see becoming a very big part of our business over time. I mean, you think about plant-based protein and that great need that's out there for the planet. Hemp could play a really important role in that. And to your point, that may be, I don't want to say the easiest, but one of the best ways to get regenerative protein into the marketplace, because hemp is such a great plant for regenerative growing practices because of its innate properties.
Right.
Yeah.
Jared, it's super inspiring to hear your level of knowledge on the agronomy piece and how tapped in you are to that as the CEO. Because I think we need way more of that on the CPG side. It's very clear that there's a extreme business case for why you would need to be behind this brand, but I just think it's really cool. And I would love to hear you speak to kind of you're a classically trained CPG person. You've worked at Kraft, you've worked at Hain Celestial. How do you view the regenerative movement and regen overall as an opportunity as someone that this is not your first rodeo in CPG at this point?
Yeah.
And one additional question I want to layer in there. When did you first hear about regenerative? What was your inception point there?
Oh, that's a great question too. So my journey is more of a classically trained CPG, brand management track, right? Where I did start at Kraft Foods, and I worked on, more conventional products and, beverages and coffee, and, and then, going to Hain Celestial, about 10 years into my career, was really, for me, the game changer and really understanding organic more deeply. had admired it and I had used organic products, as a consumer, but then being at a company that was so deep with so many of the brands in organic, helped me understand that. I'd say, Regen started registering for me prior to even coming to Manitoba Harvest. And I joined Manitoba Harvest in 2021. While I was even still at Hain Celestial, I was certainly looking at some of the real, innovators in this space. And I was thinking about, how do different types of products, navigate the space, especially the ones that are multi-ingredient, because I worked on a lot of multi-ingredient products at Hain, not just kind of single ingredient. And that's interesting, right? Like, can you source everything regeneratively? Do you have to source everything regeneratively? And I'm sure, a number of the conversations you've had with different folks on this podcast have gone into that and what the trade-offs are and what the balancing is of that.
Right.
So I had always thought about it. I probably discovered it, at an Expo West, that I've been going to for 15, 20 years, right? Where I started seeing it pop and I started checking it out a little bit more in earnest. And again, I was thinking, how do I get, some of my brands, exposed to regenerative, maybe through a single ingredient when I was at Hain. And we were looking at that particularly on the snacks categories. But then when I came over to Manitoba Harvest, it was like staring me in the face. I was like, oh my gosh. As I learned more and more about the agronomy of hemp and what hemp, looked like, I started asking the questions. Some of my colleagues, who also, were more classically trained, and had seen some of these market trends develop, started asking the questions. And it came together pretty quickly. Like I said, we started having these conversations, in, 21, by 22, we were planting it. And then by 23, we had it out in market, through our farming partnerships that we were able to turn things on pretty quickly. So yeah, that was probably my journey into Regen. And it's a journey that, I think a lot of folks who are in CPG are probably, going through themselves and, hey, I've seen more of this, in the marketplace. I'm seeing more of this at trade shows. I'm seeing more of it on shelf. And what can I be doing with my brands? And that's the inspiring part. Like, that's what we all want, right? We want, more CPG folks saying, how do I get Regen as part of the DNA, of what my brand is doing? Because I think it really does, benefit us all. And I think it's a question you guys ask sometimes, like, how do you get half the market there, in the future? That is what we want. And that would have such great benefit, to the planet if, not just Manitoba Harvest, but, everything sitting alongside Manitoba Harvest, on our shelf, is making some effort to get there over time.
I think you're spot on, and I'll share a personal story. I work for, or I'm on the volunteer board of an organization called Cultivate Bend. We recently hosted a screening of Common Ground on March 29th, and we had to share that with our local community. And since then, I've had 2 different brands reach out and say, hey, I want to figure out how to source more regenerative products and get it into my LOI, my list of ingredients. Like, who do you know? Like, who can you connect me to that can help me with this? So to your point, like, the interest is there, and these existing brands are like, how do I become a part of this movement? How do I support this? Because it really does feel like the future of food. And I think we got to do more of that. And just kudos to the whole Common Ground team for putting together such a beautiful movie that's so well produced and like entertaining and captivating to watch.
Yeah, I love that. And look, let me put that out there too. If there are others that are listening who maybe source ingredients from Canada, particularly the Canadian prairies, whether it be oats or barley or flax or any of the other ingredients that our farmers might be working on and growing as part of rotation, with hemp, please reach out to us at Manitoba Harvest. We will connect you with some of these farmers that we're already working with in the regen space and others who are interested in getting into regen. Because again, I think that's where a tipping point happens is, someone calls me tomorrow and says, hey, we're looking at regen oats. Do you have a farmer we can work with? Or we're looking at regen buckwheat. Buckwheat's grown in quite a bit in Quebec. Can you connect me with a farmer that might be going this way on hemp? We can get there a lot faster if we combine efforts. So that's actually really inspiring to hear that people are reaching out to you right after that film was aired.
Totally. And I love the offer you're putting out there in the ether, let everybody know, like, hey, that's what it's all about, is collaboration and aggregation, right? To help to spur the action on the ground. So that's super cool. Appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. And Jared, I'm curious, like, as you sit there as a CEO and you think about the future of this business, right? what we see from a Regen perspective right now is there is some unit economic upside in premium pricing. There's some retailer demand, and there's an early adopter consumer base, but it's not really enough to drive, like to really underwrite a change of your business, right? It's cool.
Sure.
We're testing it. A
Yeah.
lot of these things are very limited with the market data we actually have just because of a time, perspective and small sample size. But like what do you see as the theory of change that will really spur the commercial growth? Is it linking it to nutrient density? Is it eventually it's going to be as strong of a claim as organic? And we have people that think it's going to outpace organic. Do you think it's always going to be a less than 5% of the market? We're asking people to buy altruistic benefits at a premium. Like, how do you see this eventually playing out in the claims universe?
Yeah. I think, it's a great question. I think it could be a couple of those avenues. Let me start with the claim piece because, what I witnessed in my time at Hain Celestial that I never would have imagined was, the rapid development of non-GMO project, right?
Yeah.
Which started as, a couple brands putting it on pack, and within 5 years, it was like table stakes, right? Where every brand had started putting it on their pack because there was just this consumer interest for it. And even the consumers maybe that were less sophisticated, they saw it as, some heuristic or some, acknowledgement of some kind of quality standard within their products. So I think Regenerative has that potential, as, a kind of group of leading adopters, bring it into their homes and, and advocate for it, and more products come out there. Like sometimes there does become this tipping point of, I've seen that logo on 2 or 3 of the cool products that I really enjoy, or some of my most beloved products. I want to see it on more of my products, and it just starts happening. So I think there's a piece there. What I think also though is really interesting that you brought up even before that was, how do we get to that next level of explaining both the nutritional, environmental benefits of Regen, and what claims could we maybe then make it a must-have for for at least some consumers. Like, I'm going to go pay this little bit of premium because I know I'm getting more nutrient density, or I'm going to pay this little bit of premium because I can quantifiably understand the impact of that choice versus another choice I would make on shelf. So I do think that's there. I think again we're still in an earlier stage of development here, but hopefully that continues to emerge.
Yeah, Jared, I was really hoping you were going to answer that question because AC and I ask ourselves that same question. I mean, every week, if not every day, right? So at least we're all asking the right question. That's good. I want to pivot a little bit and talk about what it's like to be the CEO of Manitoba Harvest as part of this larger publicly traded company. And you all have really prioritized regenerative. How do the other organizations that you all kind of work with in this same, larger company feel about what you're doing? What are they trying to learn? If anything, do they care? What does all that look like?
Yeah, that's been pretty inspiring. I mean, there's been some really great feedback and, admiration for what we've been doing on Manitoba Harvest as part of a bigger entity. And there's been a lot of interest. I actually have been surprised, by the level of interest of my colleagues who are in sectors that maybe normally aren't as focused in on agricultural practices. I think, the most interesting opportunity that I see. So we have a sister division that's made up of a number of beer and spirit companies. And some of those beer companies were kind of original, kind of OG, craft breweries that are throughout the country. And one of the things that, I've started talking to some folks in those organizations about is the opportunity here for Regen within some of the agricultural products that go into making beer, right? If you think about, barley and hops, and, you think about some of the other things that go into beer, or if you think about, we've got a great brand called Breckenridge Distillery that does some fine whiskeys out of Colorado. Like, there's some really neat opportunities to bring regenerative grains into the fold for those brands. And that's a sector where, and you might see a lot more than I do, but I haven't seen a whole lot of activity in Regen just yet in beer and spirits. And I think that would be pretty cool. And that's yet another touch point with consumers, maybe in an unexpected place where they can do some discovery of Regen and what it means. So So that's been really fun internally, just being an advocate for Regen and starting to explore those conversations with colleagues, in very different parts of, the CPG industry.
Mm-hmm.
That's super inspiring to hear. AC, you go ahead.
It's super interesting to think about that beer and spirits market. I mean, we've had some wine producers, I think top line of what we're seeing there is Maker's Mark has made some big commitments. They're pretty tied in with Regenified. You have what Patagonia's Provisions is doing on the beer side. They're obviously very tied in with Rock. I was actually shocked.
Shout out to Anytime also. Shout out to Anytime for what they're doing.
You got Anytime. You got some of the wine folks. But I was shocked at Expo West. Guinness had their 0%, like their non-alc beer in the hot products hall. And they had this giant display about regenerative agriculture. Like literally it was half the booth. And it was talking about all the practices that they're implementing from that perspective. And so I was super curious about that because to me, like you said, that consumer is especially not making purchasing decisions with the same drivers as maybe the person buying packaged hemp hearts at Whole Foods. So the architecture of how you build it into a claim or the marketing strategy or the storytelling or whatever is so different. And I'm just, intrigued to kind of continue to see how that space develops around this topic.
Yeah, that is interesting. And I missed Guinness at Expo West. That's interesting to hear. For me, the connection does though happen with, some of these, craft breweries where you might have that same consumer who is going into a natural retailer and then maybe going to the brew pub of their local craft brewery. And there's an opportunity there beyond just buying the can on shelf in a retail environment. But when you get to a brew pub, when you get to a brewery, there's actually a very captive audience wanting to learn very deeply about how are you making the product? How are you brewing it? How are you sourcing it? Right. So it's a really fertile ground to do some education. And I do hope that is something we can manifest in a number of our brands who do have tap rooms and breweries throughout the country, if we can make this leap into Regen with them.
Totally. Well, and there's like anything craft, like the wine, the craft beers, the spirits, like the flavor and taste profile is so important to those consumers. And I don't think there's a ton of data on this yet, but there is a real link between not just nutritional density, but taste and regeneratively grown products. And I think that could be another sort of like an inception point for consumers who, I mean, everybody drinks alcohol, massive total addressable market, right? Where you can go in and be like, hey, like, oh, my beer tastes better because it's grown regeneratively. Maybe I want my crackers to taste better or my hemp protein to taste better or whatever else, you know what I mean? So it could be a great like gateway into regenerative because there is that emphasis on quality and taste. Whereas a lot of other categories that are relatively commoditized don't have that.
Yeah. Yeah. That might be more functional. Yeah. That's a great point.
Another thing I want to talk about, I know you had mentioned before we started recording that you wanted to talk about innovation. We love talking about innovation on the pod. So curious from your perspective, like where is Manitoba innovating? Like what's coming next for you all?
Yeah, so that's really exciting for me. One of the things that I've really enjoyed over the last few years is how many great applications there are for hemp and how many places we want to get hemp integrated. And let me take a step back in terms of like, for those who are not as educated on hemp, what's so great about hemp? Well, I mean, hemp is super high in protein. In a 1 ounce serving, a 28 gram serving, you're getting 10 grams of plant-based protein in a hemp heart. You're getting 12 grams of omegas. So omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. There's not a lot of great, plant-based sources that are so bioavailable for omega-3s. And then it's like just loaded with, vitamins and minerals. So if you think about those areas, like that's how we've thought about innovation. Like where is there a need to bring more protein, into innovation, where in a very natural way, not through necessarily isolates, but through just whole seed, whole products. Where is there an opportunity to bring omegas, into innovation? Some of which we can do ourselves. So, we just launched a hot cereal. It's a super seed oatmeal that's a combination of oats, hemp, and some other seeds like flax and chia, but a lot of hemp in there. And you end up getting like this really protein-rich, delicious oatmeal that you can have in the morning that keeps you full through the morning and gives you that protein that you need. We're looking at the snacking category, and there's some projects we're working on there, again, with real protein, nutrient-dense snacks, that can fill you up in the morning occasion or in the afternoon, that have hemp at kind of the core of what we're doing. But then, as you shift and you think about like, where can our hemp oil go? Not all of these projects are necessarily ones that, we want to take on our own. And that's where we're working with partners. How do you integrate hemp oil, into, things like salad dressings? How do you integrate hemp oil, into places where, you want to add that richness of omegas? And so we are working with a lot of partners on projects that I think are super intriguing and hopefully will be coming to market in the next, year or so, that bring more and more hemp oil based products to market because of that omega piece. And, we did launch a culinary oil a year ago. Typically hemp was sold as a supplement oil, and there was this wrongful perception that hemp couldn't be used for medium or higher heat cooking because there's high omega content. And typically your high omega oils don't do very well with smoke points and flash point. Again, interestingly enough, and this is where like hemp just hasn't been studied, until the last, decade or so. When we started going out and doing testing on hemp oil, we found that the smoke point was significantly north of 400. Like you could do sauteing, you could do some real nice baking applications. You're not going to do deep frying, because it's not a refined oil, but with an unrefined hemp oil, you can get to like, a 410, 415, 420, smoke point. And I think that was really cool to understand. And it allowed us to then go into the innovation space of putting a hemp oil on the market for those culinary uses. So, I mean, those are just a few examples. Like we're just getting going. Like I'm so excited about what we can be doing, on Manitoba Harvest itself. And then, like I said, having this whole ingredient side of our business where we partner with other brands, and we can help them do some of that research and development. I think there's just, huge upside on hemp. And even though, we sit here today, we know about hemp. Hopefully many of the listeners know about hemp. Household penetration on hemp is still really small. It's less than 5%. And even in Canada, it's less than 5%.
Crazy.
I know. Isn't that crazy?
That is
I know.
nuts.
We're always amazed. We're saying, okay, we're just at like the tip of the iceberg here. Even in Canada, where it's been around, much longer in terms of the market and the understanding of it, it's less than 10%, even in the Canadian market. So there's a whole lot of people out there that need to start using hemp, and the sooner that we can get it into all kinds of products, that penetration is going to go up and up.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, and I can't think of a more well-positioned, like ironically legacy brand. Protein is only becoming more and more important. Omegas are only becoming more and more important. And those are like two of the key, like primary attributes for hemp. Like to your point, you're so well positioned and there's so many opportunities. It's probably somewhat overwhelming, to look at the category data, like, okay, cool. Like we can go this direction, we can go this direction, so that's gotta be hard, right? To choose strategically, okay, which of these do we have the time and bandwidth to go after first? How do we make that prioritization? Order of operations, who are the potential partners? So I'm excited just hearing you talk about it, and curious to see where things go next.
Totally. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
Jared, on the B2B side, is there an opportunity for any like co-branded or, people launching products and you have a little Manitoba Harvest seal on it? Or is it all really just, hey, we're an ingredient supplier, we're just selling them the ingredient,
Yeah. There's absolutely an opportunity. And we've talked to one or two partners about that, especially when we're doing some big development together, in terms of having our logo, their logo together. Most of our partners, / customers just want their brand to be the hero. And we're okay with that. If that's ultimately, if you want your brand to be the hero brand and we can be the enabler to get you the hemp ingredients, that's perfectly fine. So long as, you're doing, what you need to do to, tell the story and, and build up a nice business. But yeah, I think those are special partnerships when you can get that co-branding as well. And, maybe there's some marketing investment from both organizations, maybe there's, kind of complementary, sales and marketing opportunities within our organizations to go and sell the product. Those are kind of neat when they come together. So yeah, we're very open to both.
Yeah, I don't mean to make this more complicated than it already is because there's so many applications for hemp. There's the B2B side. There's all the different branded side. I'm curious from a food service perspective, in particular, like the smoothie area, right? I feel like that's a huge potential market. Like, is that something you all are currently working in, something you're curious about working in? And if so, what does that channel look like for you?
Yeah, it's early days on that. We historically haven't focused on it, but it's one of the things that, my team and I have sat down and mapped out as a big opportunity, like to build out, a food service strategy and to get the right partners in place. We don't have a food service sales force per se. Um, but yes, absolutely. I mean, you think about restaurants, especially, more and more restaurants have healthy offerings, have, high protein offerings, keto friendly offerings. Like hemp fits into all of those categories, right? Whether it be, as a complement or kind of the crux of the meal or the dish that's being built. You think about, universities, and that's a big one that we talk about is,
Right.
how can we find the right partner to maybe bring us to universities? Because, you have a very open-minded consumer, in that 18 to 25-year-old range. And, that may be a great time for someone to discover hemp and, a really great source of plant-based protein and plant-based eating. So yeah, we think the opportunity is endless there on the food service side. It's just been a matter of focus and attention. And we've been focused a lot on ingredients and retail up to this point. But I think that is certainly a big frontier that's ahead of us.
Super cool. And yeah, I think you're spot on. There's so many applications and so many opportunities. Just overwhelming.
Yeah.
So again, curious to see where you land. It's going to be fun to see hemp continue to explode and hopefully get more households here in the future.
Totally.
And
Great.
Speaking of overwhelming, let's go to the most overwhelming question of them all to close this out. Which is, and Jared, you started to touch on it earlier too, but curious to give you the floor back for kind of a full answer. How do we get Regen brands to have 50% market share by 2050? How do we do that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fantastic question. I know you guys ask that question all the time, and I've heard some great answers there. I think it really is about consumer education, and it gets back to, what we were talking about a little while ago. Like, how do you get to that tipping point where, there's going to be the consumers who educate themselves. How do you get more consumers who educate themselves? And then how do you bring along the consumers that maybe don't care about educating themselves, but just want that shortcut of, this is good for me and it's doing something good for the planet. And that's all I know, but that's fine enough. Right. So to me, that's what gets us to 50% is, when you've got a critical mass at the top who's leading the movement. And then you've got an even bigger group of people who want to follow that movement for whatever reason and do it in a very simple way. So to me, it's like, how do we continue to build enough of, our real advocates, here at the top of the movement to then influence everyone behind them. And I think it's more and more brands getting there. I think it's some big CPGs continuing to get there because, while I sit here, and Manitoba Harvest is a nice sized brand, I know that, my household penetration is only what it is. And, when you get, some of these other big mega brands, the $1 billion brands starting to talk about Regen, that really makes a difference. And, I've worked at companies that have had some of those brands, and I know, what their marketing engines can do, right?
Yeah.
When they get on something and they want to go and talk to their consumer about it. So, that's my hope is, we lead the movement, as some of these, true blue mission and purpose driven brands. And then we make enough noise that, the bigger brands who maybe aren't as mission driven, but are opportunistic, see it, hear it, start pushing it out there. And then the whole supply chain just starts evolving and changing. And to me, that would be wonderful. And I think there is an opportunity to get to 50% of the market one day. It's an aspiration that I share with you guys and with many of the others who have been on the podcast.
Yeah, we certainly hope so. And what you mentioned before, but we're currently in this sort of hardcore phase. There's this concept I heard a couple of years ago that I really love. And it's about you put consumers into 3 different boxes. There are swimmers who stay on the surface. There are snorkelers who dive a little bit deep. And then they're scuba divers who go way deep and want to understand everything about the product.
Right.
And right now, Regenerative is sort of focusing on the divers, as it should. Those are the people who are the early adopters and carrying the torch forward. But to your point, eventually we can hopefully get enough steam where we can focus on those shallower consumers who are just I know that this regenerative means something good, and I want to buy it because of that inherent goodness that I feel either for myself or knowing that it does something good for the planet. So I think you're spot on there. And there was something else I was going to say, but I completely lost my train of thought. So I'll see if AC has anything else he wants to add.
Yeah, I'm going to throw in one more question here, Jared, that's really coming to mind given your set of experiences, which is, we know a lot of those huge brands, those $1 billion brands per se, will never have a fully certified regenerative product, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do we hold them accountable and prevent the greenwashing to get
Yeah.
them involved in a meaningful way where they're doing meaningful work and they can help us spread the awareness and tell the message, but like it is legit. Like I'm curious
Yeah.
with your set of experiences, how do you think about that?
Yeah, no, that is, that's the $1 million question is, how do you avoid that greenwashing? How do you avoid, some of the, the Regen light, entering the marketplace and taking credit for it, but not really doing the activities that make the impact, on the planet and on, on the farm. I don't know what the perfect answer is there. I would say, there's always going to be, a level of gatekeeper that the retailer plays that can kind of hold the manufacturer on, keep the manufacturer honest, so to speak. So I think that becomes important and remains important. And I think by and large, what I've seen, look, with USD organic, no one's cheating USD organic, right? And if we can get to a common set of certifications that, you can't go in and claim your regen unless you're going to be at these different certification levels. Maybe that safeguards that a little bit, just like it has on organic, where, there is a certification and, it prevents bad actors from being, in the marketplace. So yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky one because I'm sure there will. And look, this is a conversation I've had with some peers too. Like I'm sure there's going to be desires to go, and do much bigger projects in regen that are non-organic in the years to come. And those can have huge, profound impacts, right? So I think we should all have an openness to it. But I think there's also a balancing of, how do you make sure, in regen that's not all the way to the current rock standard, you're getting, what really makes the impact on the planet, on the people, on the farm. You don't lose it. So I think we're just all going to have to be super involved in this process and have these tough conversations and these debates and, show up, when we're having, these meetings.
Yeah,
totally. Well, for the consumers who are interested, check out manitobaharvest.com. You can learn all about the brand there and the regenerative efforts. Also, I would be remiss if we didn't give Trisha and Rebecca on your team some level of acknowledgement. Trisha is wanting to contribute to the Regen Coalition. We really appreciate the enthusiasm. Yeah. I was lucky enough to meet Rebecca and a couple other members of the team at CHFA last week. Awesome. So just want to give a shout out to their level of enthusiasm for wanting to collaborate with other brands and move this initiative forward. We love that. And we're stoked to have Manitoba Harvest in the fold to push these initiatives forward because collaboration is really the key.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. And I want to personally thank my team because, it does take a village. And if it weren't for, the 100+ Manitoba Harvest employees, who really do care about sustainability and care about, what hemp can do for the planet, these initiatives, wouldn't happen. And, I'll say one last thing, being a regen brand, it just fits in perfectly to everything we do and everything we're about. We're a certified B Corp as well. So it was very easy for our employees to understand what was going on with regenerative agriculture and want to get behind it and want to have, a leadership position in the regenerative space. So Kyle, thank you for saying that and acknowledging a few folks on my team. And, thank you for all the time that you're willing to spend with us and highlight, what we're doing.
Yeah, and I so appreciate the way you showed up to answering all these questions because we don't know the answers to any of them, but you gave us real, honest, transparent, educated feedback, and that's all we have right now. And I do think our movement is limited by the amount that we are all willing to show up in that capacity, and so we have to continue to do that, and we have to continue to do it a lot more. And so, just love the way you showed up, man, and thank you for spending the time with us.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
For show notes, episode transcripts, and more information on our guests and what we discuss on the show, check out our website, regen-brands.com. That is regen-brands.com. You can also find our Regen recaps on the website. Regen recaps take less than 5 minutes to read and cover all the key points of the full hour-long conversations. You can check out our YouTube channel, Regen Brands Podcast, for all of our episodes with both video and audio. The best way to support our work is to give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform, subscribe to future episodes, and share the show with your friends. Thanks for tuning in to the Regen Brands podcast, brought to you by the Regen Coalition and Outlaw Ventures. We hope you learned something new in this episode, and it empowers you to use your voice, your time, and your dollars to help us build a better and more regenerative food system. Love you guys.